This is only going to be the second released episode of the month. We're recording it on the 30th. We'll see if it gets out before January.
Sorry, man.
Not your fault. My fault. It's
a hard month.
It's a hard month. Normally we can get the full slate out in December, but I feel like people are just busy this year. So I'm looking at it as like, whatever, this is hibernation. It's good we're doing a second episode because otherwise the only December episode would be Django Unchained, and that seems like a weird Christmas message to send.
So the Leo theme is continuing.
Yeah, it ended up being only Leo episodes. Wow. This one more of a feature performance from Leo than or I guess more of a main feature technically is supporting, depending on if you're going by SNL terminology.
Yeah, this is the top bill Leo.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, so let's get into it. As you know, I don't know how to start the podcast, so it'll either be that or something along the lines of Welcome to Late to the Movies. My name is Ben Holton. This is a podcast where my friends and I get to fill in our movie blind spots. Each week, we'll pick a film that either I or a guest hadn't seen before and really should have by now. This week, continuing a month that never got a name because it was sort of more, I don't know. I couldn't find a simple way to say movies that were released on Christmas, though not necessarily Christmas films.
Opening Christmas Day.
Coming to theaters everywhere, December 25th month.
Coming Christmas Day, sorry.
There you go. Oh. That makes sense. It makes a lot of sense for this movie.
That it does.
This movie is Wolf of Wall Street, here to talk about it. Left to right across your podcast style. Patrick's back.
Hey, everybody. Great to be back.
Yeah, this is Spartacus to Wolf of Wall Street. Yep. Since you have so much free time, we're only tackling epic length films.
I will say, I was talking to my wife, and I was like, what was the last feature length film we watched? Was it Spartacus? And she's like, yes, it was.
Yep.
Which is rough. Makes me sad in my heart a little bit, but not that it was bad, but just that's not a lot of movies in a month's time.
No, but you just missed out on Christmas sort of fluff that you could have seen.
I did see some. I mean, I don't count like watching parts of movies I've seen a billion times, like Christmas Story or Christmas Vacation. Those don't count, but
yeah. Do you have any go-tos? My Muppet Christmas Carol, even though this is only the second episode, has already been mentioned a lot on this.
I watched it last year. Okay. I didn't watch that this year. Cool. I mean, we do watch the Charlie Brown Christmas. That's a go-to.
Got to get that sad tree.
Yeah, I usually watch Christmas Story just because it's on TV nonstop. Elf also on TV nonstop, and National Lampoons. I don't like pop those in to watch them.
You don't really have to seek them out.
They seek you out. Exactly. Those are like the three Christmas spirits that visit you every Christmas. So, so I watched bits and pieces of those, and then that was it, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched Muppet Christmas Carol. I have been busy since Christmas, so there's a couple Christmas releases that I want to bang out soon, hopefully. Haven't seen Nosferatu.
I really want to see that.
Yeah, me too. Soon. Maybe tomorrow? I don't know.
We should go tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And Complete Unknown, I guess it's going to get a lot of stuff, and I don't know.
That sounds like a wait till it's on whatever it's going to be on Prime or what have you.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about that movie.
Yeah. My dad, who remembers the 60s, really wants to go, and he goes to like two
nice.
movies a year.
Yeah,
so.
that makes sense.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. I saw Joan Baez at Newport Folk Fest this summer, so we'll see.
Yeah.
I forget which of the main actors in it is playing Joan Baez, but none of them look like Joan Baez. No offense to Joan Baez. They just like, I appreciate the sort of authenticity. People are using their real voices and they're not in like huge prosthetic makeup to look like real people. They're just sort of like playing the part like an actor might. No shots at Bradley Cooper for the Leonard Bernstein nose, but...
I didn't see that movie, Maestro, right? That's what it's called.
Yeah, that was the last like musically related biopic I could think of that isn't explicitly a music.
Maybe one of the worst genres for me is the music related biopic.
They never stop coming out though.
I know
they're always coming out,
but they're very cookie cutter sometimes.
Yeah,
they can be done well, but yeah. That Complete Unknown's a movie for me that I'm going to wait to see when I don't have to pay for it.
I think that's a very fair take.
I still want to see a Nora as well.
Yeah.
Not a Christmas release, but,
No, still haven't gone to that either.
And The Brutalist is on my list. The movies I want to see.
Speaking of clearing out some time, that's an even longer movie than Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess Adrian Brody back. We'll see.
Has he ever left?
He hasn't had a lead role since he won Best Actor, really.
He's a lead in Darjeeling Limited.
That's true.
And,
that's true. I mean, he had a handful.
Brothers Bloom. He co-lead with Margot.
Technically, right?
Yeah, yeah. And he's I don't know. I feel like he's in things. He's a lead enough.
He's in stuff.
Yeah.
It's interesting when he shows up. I think he's been a cool Wes Anderson, one of the 20 builds people in Wes Anderson movies.
Yeah, he's a staple.
Not counting Darjeeling, where he's a lead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Showed up in a couple episodes of Succession.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's funny.
Yep. But yeah, apparently the linchpin of this epic film that is getting a lot of buzz.
It's the guy from the kid from Funny Games, right? Directed it.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. The American Funny Games.
Yeah. Well, all to say, there's movies out there to be had.
Not having them right now, but we will.
I think since last time we recorded, I watched Alien Romulus.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Did I tell you I watched it last time we recorded? I did.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I did watch it in the meantime. If I did,
either way.
Yeah. What did you think of it?
I had a good time.
Yeah.
But it was sort of like reminding me why I like what Ridley Scott was doing with his more recent Alien movies, where it's like there's a Letterboxd review that I think was someone I follow, so I'm not sure if it's like one of the top whatever on Letterboxd. It's like, I mean, I had a good time. I'm not sure if Alien needed its own Force Awakens, where it sort of just like plays the hits and adds like a couple new things, but yeah. I mean, I had a good time. I find it more interesting to just sort of delve into the nonsense like Ridley Scott does.
Yeah, no, same. I think like if I were to rank, since you asked me to rank my Alien franchise movies right now, I don't know if you heard that off.
I totally Mike. I use sign language.
Alien, obviously number one, and then I would go Prometheus, and then I would go Covenant, and then I would have Aliens. And then I would Alien 3. Those two are tied for me. And then Alien Resurrection can go fuck off.
Yeah.
Alien Romulus would probably be around that. Aliens, Alien 3.
Yeah, somewhere in the middle kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a good movie. Fun, but I definitely liked Covenant and Prometheus. I think a bit more than at least the internet community seems to like them.
Yes. I think the people still talking about them have maybe not many. There's maybe not many of us, but they're loud. So there's a lot of appreciation.
Yeah,
for
especially Prometheus. People hate on that movie, but it's a great movie.
It is,
I think it's a really great movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it did a lot of things that have been done better in other Alien movies, and then one thing that's done better in a different Predator movie where a character uses a line from a different movie in the series, and you're like, I guess he's also seen that movie when the android says, "Get away from her, you bitch."
Yeah. I did like the weird...
Which Sigourney Weaver says to an explicitly female-coded alien,
yes.
And this is just to a random xenomorph.
Yeah. I did like the weird engineer-ish xenomorph situation that happened.
Yes.
I always love a new kind of monster within the alien xenomorph family.
I liked that guy.
I like the guy who played the AI.
I thought he did a good job. I think it's the Fassbender version's better
for sure. You could have just arguably like had an early model Fassbender.
Yeah,
for even more continuity. I also like Ash. A little bit too heavy on the exposition and the bad CGI.
Oh my God. Why was like Xbox 360 level CGI on that guy's face? I don't know why. Just have a different act. Just have an actor.
Exactly.
It's fine.
Just you literally created a world in which you've established like different android models exist. Just get an actor.
Get Lance Henriksen to do
or just get like a young person that sort of looks, or just get the technology that numerous other films have used to make it look more seamless.
Or have him only speak through the screen or something. Because like when they're looking at him through the screen, it's not as bad. But when he's in the room with them, it's like, whoa, this is distractingly bad.
You could also just like edit it
Yeah.
better, so you're not looking at Ash's face for so long and being like, why does that look so bad?
Why is his mouth floating around the middle of his head as he's talking?
Not gonna lie. And it wasn't even how bad it looked. It was just a lot of exposition used for a lot of exposition.
Yeah.
Which
a bit of over-reliance there.
Yeah. So
I don't know. It's interesting. All that to say, I had a good time.
I did.
I'm glad.
Yeah,
I like Fede Alvarez as a director. I thought some of the sequences are good. I like the 0G thing with the acid blood.
yeah, I don't love Fede Alvarez.
Yeah.
I didn't love his Evil Dead.
Just say, I like Fede Alvarez.
And
I think it's interesting.
And Don't Breathe. I said it was interesting.
Yeah.
Don't Breathe had very conflicted feelings about that movie. It was a strange one. I didn't see Don't Breathe 2 though.
Yeah, I actually didn't see the sequel either. I think he's sort of on the edge of wanting to do like a throwback Grindhouse thing and isn't letting himself necessarily go there and keeping a little bit of plausible deniability, whereas a guy like Eli Roth doesn't care about anyone taking him seriously.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And makes like some really terrible stuff that I wouldn't recommend to anyone. But then like Thanksgiving was fun.
Thanksgiving was really fun. Yeah.
Whereas like with the Evil Dead, where it's like, what if we did Evil Dead again, but it's like about it's about drugs, and then also it's not funny.
Yeah.
But it has some like cool sequences.
You know what I did watch? I'm remembering I did watch a movie. We watched Evil Dead Rise. And I liked it. Because
I liked Evil Dead Rise.
I liked it a lot more than the Evil Dead reboot, and I didn't realize Fede Alvarez didn't direct Evil Dead Rise, which
makes sense.
Kind of makes sense in my mind.
Because there's a bit. It still wasn't funny.
It wasn't funny,
but it was.
But definitely delivered on the visceral.
It was more electric.
Yes,
I would say
for sure.
They did a lot with.
It was the Demons
stuff.
2 Evil Dead version. Yeah.
There was a fly ball, like the eyeball that flies, and there was zombies saying "Dead by Dawn." It was playing the hits in a way that tickled me in a fun way,
and it was just kind of like.
Yeah, and to be fair, the first Evil Dead isn't that much of a comedy, but it's just a Sam Raimi movie starring Bruce Campbell, so it has a verve to it.
Yes,
that the 2013 Evil Dead didn't.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but I did watch. I'm proud of myself. I did remember I watched a movie.
There you go. I liked Evil Dead Rise. I thought that the performances in Evil Dead Rise I liked a lot.
Yeah, nice Christmas movie too.
Yeah,
about family.
It's an interesting movie. I always like the setups in Evil Dead movies where there's someone inexplicably playing a recording or reading a book, and you're like,
yes.
You shouldn't do this, but you have to, and I will always allow it in an Evil Dead movie. Where it's
sure.
Yeah, no, sure, go ahead and read it. Go for it.
Play the LP. Play that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of 2013, Wolf of Wall Street came out in 2013. If we're ready to transition,
for sure. Yeah.
Aha,
absolutely.
I have seen this movie a number of times, but you had not.
I had not seen this movie.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I intentionally avoided it, but the moment passed when it came out. And then, as I explained to you when we were discussing potential movies to watch, I taught high school as well as undergraduate classes when I was a grad student, and an immense amount of students in both undergrads at Syracuse University and high school students wanted to write about this movie and were kind of obsessed with this movie. And that kind of turned me off of it. So I didn't intentionally avoid it, but like when it first came out, but over time I kind of did.
I think it is probably is part of the gang of Scorsese movies that you're not sure if the people who like it the most are liking it for the right reasons.
Which I want to get into.
Yeah. It's a big dorm room poster kind of movie,
it is,
I think.
And I really want to get into it because I feel very conflicted about this movie. Yeah. I feel very wet blanket-ish.
Okay.
But I could reserve myself. We have to do the summary and plot summary.
We'll do the summary and to set it up, the other Scorsese movies that we've done on the podcast, The Departed, which is comedic but more of a straight gangster drama, and After Hours, which is similar to this but more of a comedy. More of a straight comedy, I'd say. But as far as like guys in offices and I guess debauchery.
Yeah.
less debauchery.
I mean, you haven't done Casino or Goodfellas, then.
Right. Yeah.
I'm
just trying to make a through line.
This is probably the closest to Casino in my mind. Like, and like, I see them very similar.
Yeah. I think it is like Goodfellas, ending with the kind of courtroom and just talking directly to the camera. Also sort of like presenting you with stuff and then sort of throwing the mirror on you and being like, what'd you think of that? Do you like that? Is that your problem?
See, I don't think this movie did that well enough. But let's continue. Let's step backwarars
because it's fun.
Let's do a plot.
It's some really abhorrent stuff happening.
Plot summary.
Yeah, go for it.
Give
us a 1 minute plot summary.
Yeah, Jordan Belfort sells. He wants to break in, be a stockbroker, becomes a stockbroker. Market crash, sort of mini market crash. Starts selling penny stocks because he gets 50% commission, and then shenanigans ensue. He kind of uses his poor judgment, and you just kind of follow him spiraling, using plenty of drugs and doing lots of questionable, Wall Street tactics to swindle at first working class people out of their money, and then eventually targets wealthier people, and then starts releasing IOPs, gets his kind of crew together of guys that he went to school with, presumably at AU. Shout out Brady Moore, alumni of AU. Jordan Belfort, alumni of AU. And so
a lot of similarities, if you think.
Between the two.
Yeah.
So he essentially, becomes the stockbroker he wants to. And then as he increasingly partakes in more and more nefarious activities, the heat is increasing on him from the FBI and the SEC. And then you kind of follow that through line while he gets divorced, marries Margot Robbie, Naomi in the film, and then eventually, starts putting money in a Swiss bank, using his rat holes to kind of buy stock in companies that he's setting up an IOP so that he could pay himself. That kind of ends up falling apart. You watch him take a lot of Quaaludes in this movie, like a lot of Quaaludes.
Yeah.
And then he's caught because his Swiss banker ends up coming to Miami and having dinner with his friend. It's not even his fault. He's not even involved in why the banker was caught. But he ends up, I guess, like turning on everybody. And then Jordan Belfort goes to jail. Gets out of jail, becomes a kind of TV personality guy. I'm making it sound very not exciting because the movie kind of, like, in my opinion, doesn't really have a plot. It has a lot of funny scenes that kind of go on, but it doesn't really, like, the plot is, the summary is he's a stockbroker.
Yeah.
Who does illegal things.
Yeah.
And a lot of drugs.
Yeah. And then he gets arrested.
Yeah. And he gets 2 years.
And he plays tennis for a couple of years, and then he becomes a really successful in terms of like being paid a lot of money to do like speaking courses around the world.
Yeah.
Which is true. He introduces the actual Jordan Belfort, makes a cameo introducing fictional Jordan Belfort at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Speaking of actors not wearing prosthetics.
Yeah.
And to look like
they look a little different.
They look a little different. But yeah.
Yeah.
But not that was a bad plot summary because I don't know how much of the plot exists in the movie other than you're following this guy around.
Yeah, that's fair.
And his kind of gang of rich douchebags.
Yeah. They would use a worse term probably themselves and do many times in the movie. This movie set the record for profanity use and has the F word over 500 times in the script.
Okay. That makes sense. It doesn't feel like that.
Well, no, it's so natural.
Yes.
And it's so boom. And that's did not get one of Thelma Schoonmaker's Academy Award nominations for editing, but is still I think, like most Scorsese movies, especially ones that she's edited, has a propulsion to it despite being 3 hours long.
Yeah. I will say, again, we talked a lot about that with Spartacus, and the only relation between the two movies is that both, I think, are paced fairly well for 3 hour movies.
Both cover a period of life.
Yes. Both epics in their own right.
Yeah. A Bildungsroman, right? You taught English, right?
Yeah. And so, both about, former slaves. One slave to money, and then Spartacus was enslaved, by the Romans. So.
Yeah. Arguably not former on Jordan Belfort's
part. Yeah. But yeah, so that's the plot summary. I did a not as good of a job as I could have, but the
movie itself is a bit discursive. It doesn't really follow, like you said, a boom, boom, boom kind of plotting. So
yeah,
that makes sense. I forgot pretty much anytime I watch this movie, I forget that it sort of starts with almost, I guess, a Goodfellas-esque framing of like, here's this guy telling you about his life.
Oh yeah.
But the time at which Jordan Belfort's telling you about his life is caught up to about 2/3 of the way through the movie.
Yeah, about an hour into the movie.
Yeah.
Is when, or, around there.
Once he's already with Margot Robbie, but before they get divorced, pretty much. It's sometime
before he has
there.
kids.
But right.
So.
Oh yeah, it's even before he has kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's sort of like the middle period of what the movie covers is where the beginning of the movie is, that's the guy who's telling you about his life.
But it doesn't really matter because
it also doesn't
there's no
matter.
character development.
No, he's sort of shitty the whole time, and then he remains shitty.
Yeah.
And then it is, so I think, well, let's jump in there. We don't have to go plot beat by plot beat. There's fun stuff to talk about in the movie. And is it good that it's fun stuff? And it did, like you said, did they do enough to make you, to slap the audience on the wrist for enjoying it?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think there's in that. I obviously, big disclaimer. I think Martin Scorsese has done more than enough in his career to kind of prove himself, quote unquote, as having a ethical lens for the majority of his films.
Yeah.
And that is somewhat, if not very important to him as a filmmaker. However, I found this movie to be surprisingly vapid, like very hedonistic with not really saying anything at all. And I guess that's appealing. But it kind of, it is appealing. I get it. But at the same time, I think you have to squint really hard to see critiques of the kind of sequencing of events within the film and the kind of overall character of Jordan Belfort, real life character person and the on-screen depiction.
There's a lot less serious consequences for the main character in this movie than like his other movies that sort of get lumped into the worst guy you know's favorite movie.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is interesting. I think the only time that it really, really puts it in sharp focus is the final shot of the movie, how it's sort of like all of a sudden, I don't know if it's the first time, but a non-pop song, just sort of an orchestral thing, picks up and drowns out the dialogue. And then there's just a long shot of just the audience watching.
Yeah, which
sort of the end of did you ever see Beau is Afraid?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
So it sort of ends with like a reflection of a theater looking at the screen,
Yes. And I'm not so, I guess let's talk from that then. You brought up the ending.
But it's also a scene that the actual Jordan Belfort is presumably paid to be in.
Yeah. I saw, I don't typically read reviews of movies, especially like before doing this, but I did see somebody kind of, I forget who it was, but talk about how, Jordan Belfort also worked his charm on Scorsese, and, Scorsese is not immune to the kind of appeal of a Belfort. And it seems very much like being an independently funded film. Like I could very well see Jordan Belfort just being like, make my biopic, Martin Scorsese. And he's like, how much are you paying me? Okay. kind of has that feel to it. It just kind of feels like if that ending is supposed to make you as an audience member feel complicit, I don't think it really is a strong enough message of that. Yeah. And it's also like complicit in what? Like he really doesn't have many consequences to his actions. Friendship is not.
No. He doesn't care about it.
You know what I mean? Like he
fucks over everybody.
He fucks over everybody. I guess he tries to warn Donnie, but like Donnie fucks over people too. You know what I mean? Like
everybody does. And that's sort of like the end note for everyone is like the first guy that really flipped on him is I forget the actual name of the character, the one they call Rugrat because of his toupee.
Yeah. Rugrat. I mean, that's what he's known as.
Yeah. But then I think a scene or two later, he's like, yeah, everybody talked about everyone because we had to. Like, eventually everyone said everything.
Yeah. And like, I don't know. Like, I feel like that ending is trying to be, it just falls kind of flat for me, at least. Like, I felt like, is it as even strong as A Beau Is Afraid, like theater looking down on this? You know what I mean? Like, I don't.
Well, Richard Kine's not in that scene, so no.
Yeah. I just feel like it's the situation where, what did New Zealand have to do with this? Why are we picking on New Zealanders? Kiwis are innocent in this. This is an American movie. And if anything else, like it just felt very strange. I was not expecting the movie to end in that way.
Yeah.
It felt very anticlimactic. Yes.
I think you're right. And I hadn't thought of it this way, but there isn't really any arc for the main character.
No.
And so it's only, I think maybe I'm coming to that as a conclusion from the standpoint of sort of reverse engineering. Okay, so it's not actually about this guy's development. It's sort of about like, here is all this evidence, and now you how do you feel about that? It's sort of the only, like, so it's not actually about the main character. It's just like, here's this terrible stuff that happened. It's not really a cautionary tale because this guy's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like you could look at it and be like, this is an indictment on both like Wall Street as an American institution and the institutions that are meant to like safeguard against what Jordan Belfort's doing. But it's not presenting that to you. Like you have to kind of come to the film thinking that already.
Yeah. There's only a couple times that the Leo character of Jordan Belfort isn't presented as like the smartest guy in the room, even though you're told a couple times that he's not as smart as he thinks. But he has, I guess, intentionally, a lot of the supporting characters are dumber than him.
Yes.
Sort of intentionally. And then there's the one time is the boat scene with Kyle Chandler and the other FBI agent who I'm not sure ever gets a name.
You're not ever introduced to. Yeah.
Which is a great scene.
Which I quite liked.
And
I was
like you kind of think like, oh, he's sort of rolling this guy too. And then he just sort of like, oh, wait, are you bribing me? And it sort of just like turns on and you're like, oh, this guy, he's way in over his head. The real Bo Dietl has told him not to talk to this guy and he made a mistake.
Yeah. And I felt like there would be a little bit more of a kind of cat and mouse storyline that develops in the narrative. And then it kind of doesn't. Like then you kind of follow up that boat scene with, the kind of the lemon Quaalude scene situation. And then, like the FBI agent pops up here and there, but it's not like the driving force of the third act.
No. Yeah. And I guess it feels like it's set up to be a cat and mouse thing from there, but maybe, and it doesn't make this point it doesn't put a fine point on this either, but it's also like, no, he's just a dumb criminal. And so he thinks doesn't need to be outsmarting this guy. He thinks he already has.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, well, then you're going to jail. And that's what happens.
For 2 years.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
That's
sentenced for 3.
Not a lot of time.
But then out for reasons.
Yeah.
For 2 years in the one scene they show in jail, the voiceover is like, oh, I was scared to go to jail, but then it turns out everything for sale's there. And so actually it was fine. And it's a scene of him playing tennis.
Yeah. and then it cuts to him
being and then the movie's
being a speaker. It's weird.
It's like, oh, he's making probably bank to do these speaker series all over the world.
Yeah. I don't know. I felt like a lot of good performances. Like I get it. You know, like Leo's very good in it. Margot Robbie's very good in it.
Yes.
Jonah Hill is Jonah Hill. He's good in it.
One of his Academy Award nominations.
Yeah, and Rob Reiner, great in it as Mad Max. He might be my favorite part of the movie. So yeah, a lot of good performances.
Yeah.
Even Matthew McConaughey, who I feel very conflicted about as maybe not an actor, but as a cult of personality, I feel conflicted about him.
Used as a spice to like get it going in the beginning 20-ish minutes of the movie.
Yeah, and I feel like it's one of these movies where even though I hadn't seen it before, I feel like I've seen the first like 20-30 minutes just by virtue of like osmosis, like cultural osmosis. Gifts.
The like humming and chest pounding thing. All those are rookie numbers.
All of that felt very like, oh, I've seen this movie. And, you know, coupled with like seeing a lot of Scorsese's like film work. Because there's enough similar, like that's what's weird about this movie is that it's a very well done.
Yes. Beautifully made. I like this movie, I think, more than you do, but I think the main draw of it is like, here's a pretty slick package to absorb for a long time.
Yeah, I mean it's really weird. It feels
and
like
it's a I think posited as a comedy. It's dark comedy.
It is a comedy though. I don't even know how dark it is. Like it's just kind of a comedy.
It's kind of dark if you think like two steps down the road of like, oh, these guys are doing this thing, and so like this terrible thing is happening to real people.
But it's not even that but
it really doesn't ever highlight that part.
No, and as narrator of the film,
that lady looks sad after her head gets shaved.
She does.
Yeah.
But as like narrator of the film, when he starts talking about what he's doing that is illegal, he stops himself short. He's like, oh, you don't care about it.
Yes.
And like most people are probably like, you're right, I don't. Let's see you fucked up on Quaalude some more. Let's see some naked women prance around the office some more. Yeah. Let's see like, you know, like everybody beat their chest or whatever.
Yeah. I think it does make a good point, especially with what he's focusing on in the voiceover, that this is a shitty dude. But I don't think it's necessarily them being like, and so bad things are happening to him, because they don't really. But there's like a couple times where he's like, that guy died, whatever, and they spend like 2 seconds on it and then they move on.
Yeah. And
who knows? Who cares?
I'm kind of at the point though where I'm like, does the camera believe that he's a shitty dude? And I'm not so sure it does. Like I said,
that's interesting.
I think you kind of have to. It's one of the weirder parts of this movie where it's like I feel like it is like a celebration of the hedonism. I don't quite see it as a satirical take on what's occurring. And I've read reviews where people are like, oh, it's a brilliant like black comedy satire. Yeah. It's like, I don't see the satire here.
I mean, there's a ton of reviews that are very much aligned with the like, no, that's not here. This is just like bacchanalia for the sake of it.
It kind of feels like that. Yeah. It kind of feels like
extremely well photographed, hedonism.
Yeah. And it feels kind of like if you were a very wealthy person who wrote a book about your life and you did the things that you did and you wanted to hire a director to make the movie about you, you'd pick, oh, I want Martin Scorsese to direct my movie and I want Leo to play me. And it feels like that. And I want the funny kid from Superbad to play this guy. Like it kind of just feels like picked from like, I don't know. It kind of feels like when you have the money to blow, this is what you do.
And it's also, I mean, you take it directly from the horse's mouth, kind of, as you're saying, like, I don't know if it makes enough of a point that this is a bad dude. The actual Jordan Belfort really likes this movie. And like, if it's about a guy like that, should the person at the end be like, yeah, that's about how it went? His thing was like, I was actually on more drugs. It was way worse than that.
Yeah. Which, like, I guess, like, if you're really invested in the admiration and adoration of 19-year-old, like, undergraduate students, then cool. Like,
That does seem like a thing he cares about.
yeah, I mean, that very much seems like a thing he cares about throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
And, you know, based on how the movie was marketed and kind of the primary audience for the movie.
And it is in the text of like he gets a lot of satisfaction out of, oh, these guys would drop out of college and like come work for me. So yeah, like you said, like 19-year-olds.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of feels like, you know, I compare this to other movies that are critical of our, you know, of capitalism, of Wall Street. And, you know, like Margin Call, right? Like, I don't know if you've seen Margin Call. Very, very good movie. You know, very interesting movie about the kind of, you know, financial collapse of I think 2008 is what it's depicting. But it clearly sending a message about like how, like what is occurring. It's trying to I guess edify you as to why this was why this was a series of poor decisions that ended up affecting everybody's life. Even the show like Succession that you brought up before, you know what I mean? Like Succession, I think, is a much more satirical, dark take on the milieu of you know.
It very much underlines how bad everyone is and how incompetent most of the main characters are.
Yeah. and then I feel like this is just kind of like a romp. It's kind of like you know, it kind of feels like, like there's what it's depicting, like a big orgy office party.
Yeah. I can see that for sure.
I don't like, okay. So what do you love about this movie, or what do you like about this movie?
Well, so I would say like when I get sort of into, most of it is just like, yeah, it's really well shot. And then you can kind of hold on to like, oh, but he thinks he's a bad guy, is sort of like a life preserver to be like, oh no, it just looks cool, but I'm not actually about that, you know?
Yeah. But what if he is? You know what I mean? Like,
maybe. So Scorsese follows this up with Silence. So he's really yo-yoing between his extremes of what he's interested in as a filmmaker.
And maybe like as an artist, that was his thought process. Like,
profane to sacred.
I need to like fund the movie that no one else wants to fund, which is Silence. And
I don't know a lot about it, but there is some weird funding controversy that is just like about this movie in particular.
I mean, it's independently funded, right? So it's like an independently funded movie with arguably like the biggest living director, and the biggest leading man. And you know, potentially not at the time, but now certainly like the biggest leading actress.
Yeah, not at the time. This is my introduction to Margot Robbie. And I think so. For a lot of people, their introduction to her, and meaning their introduction to her is Jonah Hill masturbating publicly to her. Yeah. But she's recovered from that, and
yeah, she's had a fine career.
She's great in this, and it's between this and the Suicide Squads plural. I think a lot of people ultimately surprised. It's like, oh yeah, she's Australian. That's not what her voice sounds like.
Yeah.
And she's doing a New Jersey accent in Babylon. Not that anyone else saw Babylon, but
I did not see Babylon. Sorry,
it's really good. But yeah, it's great.
Okay.
She's also kind of doing this accent there too.
She does it well.
She's
got it down. Yeah. She's got it down.
Yeah.
I did feel though sometimes especially towards the end of the film, the interactions between Jordan and Naomi it had very Casino energy of De Niro and Sharon Stone. I was just like, this is like kind of copy paste, buddy. Like this is
well.
I mean, it kind of feels like similar fodder at the very least.
I think yes, similar fodder. And he's doing Decadence around similar time period too. So it makes sense. There should be some overlap, but yeah, you're not wrong for the actual actions of it.
Yeah. The actions of it and the kind of the interaction itself is just unsurprising that they would have a kind of, super, what's the word I'm looking for? Like super problematic as an understatement, toxic relationship.
Yes. So the actual person that was married to Jordan Belfort also thought that the movie does a good job portraying and hoping people learn about how to identify toxic and abusive relationships from those and sort of where they come from. It's I don't know.
I don't know if you really learn
it's
how
such
to identify.
Such a small part of it.
If your husband takes Quaaludes to the point of drooling constantly, then maybe you might be in I feel like a fucking Jeff Foxworthy bit right now. You might be in a toxic relationship.
Yes.
It's like
if you're terrified of them to be alone with your children,
you might be in a toxic relationship.
You might be,
yeah.
That's good. So that's when the character looks the worst, I guess, is when you're like, oh, he's maybe going to kill that child.
Or he just punched her in the gut, and then he's stealing the child while he has an ankle bracelet on, and it's and then it kind of just goes from there to he's bleeding, and then he's presumed what does it go for? He's getting wired.
Yes, I think the next scene is he's he's made the deal and he's getting wired up.
Weird edit there.
Yeah, I wonder if it actually worked that way, but the way it's presented in the film is day one of him wearing a wire, he fucks it up and then gets arrested.
Yeah, maybe. But I just feel like I don't want to sound like just a hater about this movie because it is kind of funny. The lemon scene, some good comedic acting from Leo there.
Yeah. The way he dances at his wedding.
Yeah.
Is comedic acting.
Yeah. Some good,
his coke energy throughout the movie is good.
But I didn't question that going in. You know what I mean? Leo's range is established. He's a very good actor. He's very funny in a lot of things. And but at the same time, I just kind of feel like,
forgot that bag was there.
You're good. I just feel like, is that, I guess my worst fears were made, came to fruition watching the movie, which is I kind of avoided it after a bunch of students wrote about it. And I was I remember because I had, not to get down the rabbit hole of what the thing was, but when I taught one of the times I taught, and a lot of students brought this up, is it was doing an interpretation of film class, TAing for it, and they had to do an analysis of a trailer. So, a lot of people chose this trailer to do an analysis of after having seen the movie, and I hadn't seen it, and then I was like, surely there has to be some critical lens to this. It's Scorsese, and these students are just not seeing it. And now, after watching it, I'm just like, oh no, they love this movie because it is one way to navigate through the world. And people did it and do it and aspire to do this.
Yeah.
And the film's pretty neutral on it, in my opinion.
Yeah, it doesn't really put the character through any sort of ringer in a way a lot of these movies do.
But then, you have... And you can't, right? He's a real person. So he didn't die when the yacht is in the storm, or he didn't die when he's flying the helicopter and, on Quaaludes and fucked up. He doesn't die, right? He doesn't have that ultimate consequence. Mm-hmm. So that, I guess, is taken away from, as a storyteller, whether you're the screenwriter or the director, that ultimate consequences taken away from you.
Yeah.
But then I go back to he just had a fun time in prison. He just played tennis and sold some other stuff.
For me, that's why I sort of reverse engineer. Well, okay, so if it's not about him and his arc, then it's about how the audience is interpreting it and reckoning with it, maybe. And
but then what does that say about film, right? Like, what does that say about, like, you made it entertaining? Like, okay, like, film is supposed to be, you know, one aspect of movie making is like entertainment, right? It's not the ultimate end point.
I was listening to a James Cameron interview recently, as I want to do, because it's the 40th anniversary of Terminator.
Okay.
And he said, the purpose of art, I can't do it, James Cameron, is to remind us that we're human.
Okay, James.
So looking at it through that lens,
if you believe that, I mean, I think it's like, this is where I'm so conflicted, is like, I don't think Scorsese is a artist without integrity or like an ethos or some intentionality. He is a prime example of somebody who has plenty of intentionality in his films. So I just keep going back to, like, what the fuck is the intention of this movie? Is it just to, like, is it a Leo vehicle? It kind of feels like that. You know what I mean? It kind of just feels like...
He probably should have won for this. Then he wouldn't have had to make The Revenant. That would have been good.
I like The Revenant, actually. You don't like The Revenant?
It's fine. It's just sort of a endurance test.
Really?
I think, yeah. I feel like it's a tough hang.
Ooh, okay.
I liked it. I've only seen it once. I don't really want to watch it again.
I've seen it a couple times. I like The Revenant.
Okay. We don't have to get into the inner of it all.
But I feel like, you know, this... It's just a situation of, like, it feels like a Leo vehicle. I mean, it feels like a commissioned piece of film.
That's a strong take. I like it, though. I like bringing the spice. One of the interpretations I've seen is that it's not just like putting a mirror in the audience's face, but also saying, like, putting a mirror up to the audience and being like, not only is this a thing that you're enjoying, but, like, a lot of people in the world, and maybe you yourself, why do people enjoy being taken advantage of? Is that part of it too? It's like, okay.
Well, yeah. And then the film is doing that, right? Like, it's exploiting you as a viewer.
Mm-hmm. And do people, like, willfully allow themselves to be exploited because they're getting something out of it?
Yeah. And is that reminding us that we're human in Jimmy Cameron's world, you know? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like there's a way in which, sure, I guess, you know, like, I guess if it were from that perspective, I think that maybe step further back from the it's you know, indictment on American society and capitalist culture. I don't necessarily believe that, but I do think it maybe goes a little bit further or takes a step back from that and is more of an indictment on, you know, like, the mark inside, you know, like, not being able to hide the mark within yourself.
Yeah.
And that there are people who, you know,
schmucks.
Yeah, you know,
Marks.
everybody's a mark.
Yeah.
If you want to view the world that way, and everybody, you know, and then you follow that up with the sacred, right? With, as a filmmaker, to kind of, you know, do your penance, I guess. I don't know. It feels very, you know, it feels very much like, I think of this movie and I'm just like, would Antonioni make this movie this way? Fellini might. But, like, you know, it's just kind of a situation of the character. And even on that point, like, leads in all those movies, whether it's Fellini or Antonioni, and, you know, I'm doing a very basic thing of bringing up Italian filmmakers of the mid 20th century, because I think that's, you know, that's who speak probably strongly to Scorsese,
sure,
as a young man, you know, just art house cinema of that time. But, like, I think about, like, I don't know, La Notte or La Strada or 8.5, and, like, you have these kind of, you know, main character men who are kind of well-to-do, sleeping with a bunch of people, and it's like you don't even have that. I guess you have moments of strife between Naomi and Jordan, but then you also have like, how did you really think the guy that left his wife for you meeting you at the party wasn't then going to be cheating on you throughout your entire marriage? Like, how naive are these people? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no one comes out.
And if he's on this many fucking drugs, like, is no one noticing that he's fucked up all the time other than, the aunt in London?
Yeah. Who's cool with it. And, a little bit into sort
the
of
idea
into
that
it.
she could if she wanted to.
Stability, family.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's just very strange. It's very...
Yeah. Why does everyone want to fuck this guy? He seems.
And why does everybody not notice that he's super fucked up all the fucking time? If he was, in his words, even more drugs than what it depicted, which is kind of like, I call bullshit on it. Like, did you, I mean,
that does sound like appealing to undergrads. Like, oh, it was even crazier than that, bro.
Right. It's like, I call bullshit on that. Like, I call bullshit on the kind of, I don't know. It's just so outlandish that could you even rein it in? As like how could he have reined it in? And maybe that's the point he got to. He's just like, I'm just going to lean into some really good performances, some solid filmmaking, because it is certainly those things. It's just not solid storytelling.
Yeah. So take that. Who wrote this?
Jordan Belfort wrote the book.
Well, yeah, Terence Winter did the adaptation.
That's a what else has Terence Winter done? I didn't even look at that.
He was the creator and writer and executive producer of Boardwalk Empire.
Okay, not seen that.
He was previously a writer and executive producer for The Sopranos.
Okay.
Starting the second season through the end of it.
Okay.
It's pretty good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, so clearly he can, write a complex character if he had the material to do so or the freedom to do so.
Yeah.
I think that this was just straight up commissioned by Jordan Belfort.
Yeah. I like the conspiracy theory.
Have you read about, so what are the, I haven't read enough about the funding.
I've read enough to see that there is like a controversies tab on its page on Wikipedia, and it mentions like, the guy who produced this ended up going to jail, and some have posited that this is sort of like a scam in the financing of it in some way, but I don't know the details, and I'm bad at finance stuff anyway, so whatever.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I feel like my wet blanket fear is coming to fruition.
Yeah, I don't think it's that wet blankety. I think it's a concern, and I was surprised watching it, knowing your thoughts going into it this time. I was like, it's really not underlining the, like, I don't know. There's a lot of like, I want to always argue for media literacy, and I don't want a thing to have to like slap you in the face and be like, this is bad, and like hang a sign on it, but it doesn't even really imply that much.
I don't want, like, I don't want that either, right? Like, I don't want it to, again, I think my biggest complaint is that all the characters are incredibly static.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, even Donnie, like you're introduced to Donnie, right? And like asking a lot of questions to somebody who lives in this building. And then like maybe 10 minutes later, he's like, smoke crack with me.
Yeah.
Which is funny. It's like a funny, in a vacuum, it's a funny kind of like very Judd Apatow-ish, scene. But in the larger scheme of the movie, or I guess like if I saw this as a 19-year-old that wanted to make a ton of money, I would probably love this movie too.
Yeah.
But I'm watching it as not a 19-year-old whose main goal in life is to make a ton of money and sleep with as many women as possible. I don't really get much out of it other than like, it's a well-made movie.
Yes.
Not a
pretty much story. all of the characters that you spend any time with, aside from a couple, are just sort of like scumbag money monsters. That is their main ambition in life.
Yeah, and I guess like I'm conflicted because like the movie doesn't need to say it doesn't need to hit you over the head with anything. It doesn't need to say anything, but it kind of goes to my point of like, I kind of didn't need to watch it.
Like you already knew that life wasn't for you.
Well, it's just like, I didn't. The only reason why I'd watch it is like we're doing this podcast, or if I wanted to like watch all of Scorsese's movies or all of Leo's movie. Like if I had a reason to watch it.
Yeah. That's fair.
The like the trailer, the kind of moment when it was released, like it didn't entice me then. It doesn't entice me now. And that's not a bad thing, but that's just like, I'm not going to read more into it that it's like trying to say something. I think maybe the, your point about whoever said that, like it's about the desire that people have to kind of be taken advantage of. I think it's probably the closest I get to like what the movie's kind of exploring.
Yeah.
And maybe Martin Scorsese himself willing to be taken advantage of, for whatever trade that he in his mind justified,
Yeah.
surprisingly difficult for him to make movies as a filmmaker. I'm sure. I don't think it's easy for anybody to make movies unless you're James Cameron and you have, I don't know whose kid you're hiding in a dungeon to be able to have all the money he has to make movies. But like, other than that, you know what I mean? Like yeah. I think he still struggles to make movies to get funding for movies.
He super does. Has more than a lot of directors of his like name status been sort of reliant on streaming platforms to get his movies out there. I think Killers of the Flower Moon was Apple.
Yep.
He made his friend Legal show on Netflix.
Irishman was Netflix.
And it was Netflix, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I feel like, unless you're Chris Nolan and you're married to a producer, or you're James Cameron and you have like a pit in your bottom of your house with a bunch of like executive children who's like you're holding hostage.
Yeah.
Sorry. Unless you're those two people, then you're struggling, right? Unless you directed Titanic.
Yeah, James Cameron is...
Or you directed the fucking Dark Knight.
3 of the top 5 grossing movies ever made. Whereas the last 3 movies he made. So.
And Chris Nolan's in the same boat, right? Like he made Dark Knight.
Almost $1 billion on an Oppenheimer biopic. So I think he's pretty much minted forever.
And so like, I get it. Like whatever trade or as an artist, you're still a worker, right? Like you're not working. There's a lot of work that goes into it.
Yeah.
And like any work, like sometimes you do a job that you take pride out of a craft of, but the materials you're using are only get you so far.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel about this movie. It's kind of like, it's second tier Scorsese. There's certainly much better movies that he's done. He's able to skillfully have critiques of things without hitting you over the head. Like watch Taxi Driver, watch Raging Bull, watch Goodfellas.
So even his last couple movies, and then looking at Killers of the Flower Moon, where Leo plays another dumb criminal, it does a lot more to be like, this guy's dumb and sucks.
I haven't seen Killers of the Flower
Moon. And we hope he has a bad life.
Yeah. But I would put this solidly in his like in his B movie, not his B, his like B game, right? Like
yeah.
It's kind of the same with Departed, I'd put in that category. It's like, it's a fun movie.
Buzzy.
Yeah.
It goes down pretty smooth.
And that feels the same way about this, right? Like it's kind of it's a crushable movie, but he's capable of more if he's given more, which isn't a bad thing, but
no. If we've done pretty much big picture talk, and
sorry,
no, that's a good thing. I think it's more interesting to me than like going scene by scene, and I feel like especially after that conversation, it feels a bit cheap to be like, so what was your favorite part? What was the funniest joke in it? But I do like a lot of Jonah Hill's line readings in this.
Yeah, Jonah Hill. I mean, Jonah Hill with the veneers is just funny.
It is a caricature of a person.
It's also funny watching this post what's happened in Jonah Hill's life since this movie. Mainly how he's sabotaged his own life.
Seemingly,
yeah.
Also for Netflix, he made that show about his therapist, right?
Yes, he did. He made the show about his therapist, and then shortly after that, it came out that he's
pretty weird,
pretty much, emotionally abusive person. So interesting, because I think that this was certainly a watershed moment in his career. It was kind of a shift from being the overweight funny guy to being the overweight funny guy in an art house movie.
Yeah. Because even in Moneyball, which he's great in, his character very much is a guy who feels like he shouldn't be in the room with these like more important people. And he has like some ownership of it by the end, but that's sort of the character's thing. Yeah. Whereas this is different. He just has to hold the screen with Leo.
And he does. I mean, he does his best, Pesci to De Niro. And that's kind of what I kept thinking when I watched this, is just like, oh, he's doing. I would watch the two of them in a movie again. Like they have good chemistry together.
He's got. I love. It's only like a scene or two, but I love how much he's needling Rob Reiner's character and how angry he's making him.
Rob Reiner is great. He's my favorite part of this movie.
So funny.
So funny.
So funny.
Definitely the funniest part of the movie.
And just a total throwaway in the scene where he's introduced in voiceover and he's
watching the Equalizer.
Watching the Equalizer. Who the fuck would have the call to call on a Tuesday night? And then and he'd have this weird thing where he on the phone would speak in a British accent, and he just does it for like 2 lines and not again in the movie. Really good.
And then his wife, trying to explain what he missed as he went and answered the phone. It's the guy. What guy?
What guy?
The main guy. That's probably my favorite scene in the movie. Like that, and then when he comes in, post them discussing the little people that they're going to throw against the dartboard. That interaction between Jonah Hill and Rob Reiner is really good.
The SEC is cool with TNA. You said TNA. I said TNA.
TNE, yeah. Those are probably the best. Yeah, the best bits for me.
Yes,
I feel like also the interaction on the yacht between the FBI agent and Leo is really good.
Kyle Chandler is awesome in that scene. How he's sort of like letting Jordan Belfort believe he is who he thinks he is, and then he like turns on a dime. And the whole dynamic.
Fuck that scene where at the end where he's on the subway. This goes back to my light conspiracy theory of the commission aspects, because that feels so dropped in.
Yes. The victory is just like, it's a non-front page. It's somewhere in the middle, and it's like a short column.
And it's also just like he is sad on the subway, just like Jordan told him on his yacht. You know what I mean? Like, and he doesn't even get the yacht as a victory because it's in the fucking, whatever sea, the Caspian Sea, on its way to Monaco. I kind of felt like that was a lame insert into the movie.
I guess you need a coda for that character, and he was still just like a working guy.
I mean, but that's where it makes me feel like, okay, Jordan Belfort wrote that fucking book. Yeah. And he had some say in the screenplay, and, he had ultimately the power of the purse when it comes to the movie.
I like that theory.
I'm sure he did. He's in the fucking movie. Come on.
He is in the movie. That's
true. Why is he in the movie?
So is an uncredited Spike Jonze. If we haven't mentioned all the that guys that are around the edges of this, but.
He's the initial penny out on the island. The penny stock guy. Yeah.
Speaking of Moneyball, also as a Spike Jonze, not making movies but appearing in 2 scenes in a movie.
Oh, role. I forgot that he's in Moneyball.
Yep. Yeah. He's the stepfather.
That's hilarious.
Of Brad Pitt's kid. Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, those are. What are your favorite part? What's your favorite, funniest part of the movie?
Well, if it's just funniest, I think it's the Quaaludes and driving scene. And,
the lemon scene.
And it's nice, I guess Rashomon style, very brief, when after he gets arrested and they show him his car, and then
not a scratch on it. And then they
you see what actually happened to the car later, and him trying to get the phone away from Jonah Hill.
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah, as far as like the acting of it all goes, and and anything Rob Reiner does is also the funniest part of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they're talking about women these days, all that whole conversation, very funny.
Yeah.
Rob Reiner. And I think
I don't mind a little bit of Bush.
Yeah. Yeah, he'd miss it. The boat scene is one that's usually held up as like best scenes in the movie, and
I mean, it is, you know, like it's.
And like you said, for the cultural osmosis for a movie this long, this independently financed, kind of art housey, has some glamour elements to it. A lot of gifts from this movie exist in the culture.
A lot.
I was thinking about it. I'm not fucking leaving.
I didn't love the kind of anytime he was in front of the whole group of them. I wasn't sold on that.
There's a lot of like cult of personality, idol worship, and he specifically has surrounded himself with like dumb, shitty guys who he's given a lot to that rely on him a lot.
Yeah.
But it doesn't put a fine line on like this isn't real friendship. These are just guys who depend on him for the terrible debauchery that they want to commit.
Yeah, and there's also, I guess like I'll backtrack a little bit because I'm thinking now about the movie as a whole and that first initial dinner with Matthew McConaughey's character, or lunch or whatever, where he's talking about like, oh, isn't it nice if you make a little bit of money and they can make a little bit of money too? And then he's like, no. It's just like the character development, like that's the character development, right? Like that's the character arc. Is that
in one scene he's like wet behind the ears, and then he's like, oh, I should be shitty forever.
He's like, oh no, I should just fucking get fucked up and do coke in the restaurant and have endless martinis, and then it's like that's it.
Yep.
So like his character development occurs literally within the first 10-15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
And then he just coasts that entire time.
Yeah. He goes from a guy that wants to be shitty to a guy that is shitty.
Yeah, he goes. Yeah, exactly. And his first wife is like
the always criminally underused Kristen Milioti, the mother from How I Met Your Mother.
She's very good in the movie, but is criminally underused in it, and she is maybe the only voice of reason. I guess you could say Mad Max Rob Reiner is, but like he's so outlandish in his reaction. I
also forget how long into it she's around for.
Yeah.
And she's like partaking
she's dumped in front of Trump Tower,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. But she's in the high rise with him. She's like there and it's like, oh, I know that you're doing this shitty thing to poor people. And I know this is a shitty thing, but maybe don't do it to rich people instead.
Yeah. And so like, but the movie's very clear at that point. Like that's her idea. His idea is just like, I want to make as much money as possible. Like all that money should be in my pocket.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, just to backtrack, there is character development. It just occurs in the first 15 minutes of the movie.
And then as far as favorite scenes go, not that it's like particularly funny or whatever, but I do like the way they frame him getting arrested in the infomercial.
Yeah,
that he's filming.
Yeah,
it's good. A fun flourish.
It is. Yeah. And then the commercial also at the start of the movie for his he likes to use that. And then you also have the Popeye scene when he's
he sees Popeye eating spinach, and so he pours a bunch of cocaine in his nose.
Yeah, that's like a funny bit.
And he stands up and pulls the phone cord off of him. Yeah, it's all good.
That's a funny end to that scene. Yes. But yeah, that's kind of like that's what's weird about this movie. Is like there are clearly a lot of memorable parts. Yep. There are clearly a lot of satisfying scenes. Yeah. But the whole doesn't really feel satisfying to me.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Heard. Let's get into ratings then. On a scale of 0.5 to 5, on any scale of your choosing except for stars, what would you give Martin Scorsese's 2013 The Wolf of Wall Street?
Okay. I'd give it a 3.5 lewds. Easiest one to pick.
Yeah.
3.5 lewds out of 5.
I'm also low-hanging fruit for the scale. 4 out of 5 rookie numbers.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, all that said, we're actually pretty close on rating.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah.
At least with the craft of it, it's hard to go low.
It is. Like I can't justify like a 3 out of 5 with it is an enjoyable movie.
Yeah. It's like, I got to think back to, like, okay, what did we give Daybreakers?
That's kind of where I was literally at. I was like, what did I give Daybreakers? What did I can't, it's got to be on a scale that's commiserate with other films that we've discussed on this podcast
that's
together.
Fair. I think that, again, this is only the second episode. We've recorded 3 episodes. The Robots ate the first one. That was Catch Me If You Can. Then we did Django. Then we did this. I think the question of the month we ended on was, what would you give the main character for Christmas?
Oh, God. What would I give Jordan Belfort for Christmas?
What do you get for the guy who has everything?
I would get him some penicillin for his back pocket. That's what I would get him.
That guy needs a lot of penicillin.
Yeah.
The kind of lifestyle he's leading.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I can't beat that. That's a really good option for him. It's functional. It's thoughtful. It shows you know a lot about the person.
Yeah. No, I care about his
It's not just a gift card to Chili's.
Yeah, exactly. Or Benihana's.
Yeah. Maybe an Uber gift card so you can get home safe.
That's a good one. Yeah. That's really nice. Yeah.
I do like that. He's just like, fucking Benihana.
I do Jonah Hill's delivery of
I'm never
going to Benihana's.
Not even if it's someone's birthday.
That's a good line. That's a good line.
That is really funny. Delivered so authentically.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess that brings us to the end of our Wolf of Wall Street conversation. Thanks for being here, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And you can find yourself on Linktree, linktr.ee/late to the movies. I hope this episode I can get through, put it out sometime in the next couple days. So I can backdate these two and sort of fake like it came out in December if it's in a few more days.
Totally did. I mean, it is December still, so.
Yeah, as we're recording. Yeah, I've moved the goalpost. The episodes just have to be recorded in the month that they were themed for, not released. And then next month is Big Tilda Swinton, so we're getting on that. I think someone's already claimed Suspiria, so I have to come up with other Tilda Swinton movies I want to do.
Okay.
That Michael Clayton's on the list too.
Okay, that's good. I've seen Michael Clayton.
Anyway, on that note, thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you.
See you next time.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.